Afternoon, everyone. Work session to order. Yes, we will start first. Thanks for being here. Looks like it's a nice day outside, so it's good to see so many people. We'll start with page 7, Faith Thomas, Real Estate Compliance.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and council
afternoon.
members. The administration is requesting approval of a contract to acquire property totaling approximately 108.94 acres for $850,000 to be used for recreational and open space purposes in the Windsor Mill area. The current owner is Dogwood Resources LLC, and the property is located at approximately 7900 Dogwood Road between Ridge and Ritter Roads. The property is primarily zoned RC6, Rural Conservation and Residential. The Office of Law Real Estate Compliance Division obtained 2 appraisals pursuant to program open space policy for review by the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. One appraisal by Associated Appraisers LLC came in on November 2022, recommending $871,500. And one by Everett Benfield Advisors on October 2022, recommending $860,000. The property owner's asking price was $850,000, and that's what we used as the settlement price. The Department of Recreation and Parks advised that the county is anticipating full program open space reimbursement for this purchase.
Okay, are there any questions, comments from the members? It's in my district, so it's always good to see additional open space being provided. So any questions, comments?
I think this is where my mother grew up. This is,
Yeah.
she went to Milford Mill High School, and it's very, very,
Maybe.
there's a lot of hills and very rugged terrain.
Yeah, where this is.
Yeah, okay. She was a miller, 1950s, yeah.
Ooh,
Thank you, yeah.
okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure. Next, we'll move on to page 17, Danielle Wiley, Deputy Director of Administration. Couple of contracts.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The administration is requesting approval of 5 contracts to provide in-service training programs for county employees as needed. The 5 contractors are Civility Management Solutions, LLC, Human Advantage Incorporated, Human Resource Management Solutions, LLC, International Training Consortium, and Total Learning Solutions. Each contract commences upon council approval, continues for 1 year, and will renew automatically for 4 additional 1-year periods, with the option to extend the initial term or any renewal term an additional 120 days. The contracts do not specify maximum compensation for the initial 1-year term, and compensation for all contractors combined may not exceed $1.2 million for the entire 5-year and 4-month term, including the renewal and extension periods. And also just wanted to point out that 4 of the contractors are MBE firms, although there was no requirement for that.
We're good. Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or contracts? Any questions or contracts for the employees? Are there any questions or comments from the members? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you. So I really support professional development. I guess these contracts are for professional development activities for county employees.
That's correct.
At the level of 1.2 million, do you have a sense of how many employees will benefit from these professional development activities? Because it's a pretty high number, and I was curious if that will address the needs of a good portion or what portion of our workforce.
It would address, I mean, it would be available for all employees. All of our part-time, full-time employees are able to take the training classes. And it ranges from everything from customer service to leadership and management training. So we do have a management track as well that everyone, so it's good for new hires coming in to learn about the county, as well as new supervisors learning policies and procedures. And then also we have classes that address retirement. So we get them from the beginning to the end. So I think it's beneficial for everybody.
Are council members and their staff eligible to take the
They
training?
are.
Okay, excellent. Okay, I'll be supporting this.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the members? Thank you very much, Ms. Wiley.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to our esteemed county attorney, Mr. James Benjamin, on page 21.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, members of the council. The administration is requesting approval of a contract with Craymont and Graham, PA, to serve as legal counsel for a county police officer in regard to litigation pending in the Circuit Court for Baltimore County. Pursuant to Section 510 of the county charter, the county is providing the officer with outside legal representation as a part of its obligation under the Local Government Tort Claims Act to provide a legal defense for the officer in the litigation. Outside legal representation is necessary here because there's a conflict of interest, or at least the appearance of a conflict of interest, which prevents the office from representing the officer. The contract will commence upon council approval and continue for 1 year. Compensation may not exceed $25,000 for the 1-year term. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benjamin. Any questions or comments from the members? None. Thank you very much, Mr. Benjamin.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to Director Terry Hickey, page 10.
Afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of
Good
the council.
afternoon.
I'm here today on behalf of the administration requesting council approval for amendments to 2 contracts, one with Pro Bono Resource Center of Maryland, that's FM3. And then if you mind, Mr. Chair, should I do both at once? They're the same.
Yes, please.
Okay, great. And then one with St. Ambrose Housing Aid Center, which is FM4. These are to continue to provide eviction prevention and housing stability legal services to county households in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. The proposed amendments are retroactive to October 1st, 2022, and will allow both organizations to continue providing essential services uninterrupted through December 31st of 2024 using ARP recovery funds. Pro Bono Resource Center of Maryland and St. Ambrose have both been partners in Baltimore County's eviction prevention and housing stability strategy. PBRC provides free legal assistance, including day of court representation on site at the county's district courthouses and extended legal representation to tenants at risk of eviction or homelessness. PBRC also offers outreach and advice through its courtroom advocacy project, Tenant Hotline, and public education sessions. St. Ambrose provides direct housing-related legal services, including advice, counseling, document review, landlord-tenant negotiations, and representation in judicial proceedings. In addition, St. Ambrose hosts landlord-tenant education and service events at library branches and collaborates with other organizations that assist in eviction prevention. These types of low or no-cost services for tenants are more critical than ever in light of the dwindling federal eviction prevention funds. And I just wanted to mention that to date, the providers have served approximately 2,200 county residents through the hotline and have actually represented over 900 residents in landlord-tenant matters since we started. We expect that the extension will allow us to do about the same amount.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nope, don't go yet. Any questions or comments from the members? Hearing none, I guess you can go on with, we'll go to page 14, contract with William Rubin.
Okay, I'll jump right into that one.
Sure.
Here on behalf of the administration, requesting council approval for a contract with William C. Rubin to provide housing development consulting services to DHCD and assisting in the department's implementation of a countywide attainable housing strategy. Specifically, Mr. Rubin will offer much-needed expertise and capacity to the department, providing support for comprehensive real estate, transaction-related activities, housing finance, loan underwriting, policies and procedures, while providing technical assistance to stakeholders, including housing development partners and community residents, as it relates to increasing and preserving the county's housing supply, the development, financing, and preservation of housing throughout the county, including units that contain some level of accessibility for our most vulnerable constituents. Mr. Rubin was selected following a competitive procurement process. He's an experienced housing professional who lives here in Towson, has the experience at the local government level and nonprofits as well. He has extensive experience working with government entities, lenders, affordable housing developers, service providers, and communities.
Sounds like you. Sounds like you're describing yourself.
Since I can't clone myself.
How much is the contract?
So the contract has a not to exceed value over 5 years for $700,000. It's essentially a $72 an hour consulting arrangement to have him on board, serving essentially as a equivalent to a full-time employee.
Okay. Any additional questions, comments from the members? None. Thank you very much, Mr. Hickey.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, stop the press.
So, Mr. Hickey, the term of the contract is 4 years?
What did you say, 5?
5 year, I'm sorry, 5
5-year
years,
term.
4 months.
5 year, 4 months, yes.
Is it anticipated that this be morph into a permanent position in 5 years and 4 months? And how are we measuring the success of this contractor?
Right. This position is going to be tied directly to our ability to produce new housing units. So we're going to have some good metrics on whether or not we've been successful in that towards VCA goals and others. We want to test this to see what we need in the future. We're using ARP recovery money for this position, tying it to our other housing initiatives. We want to be responsible before we go creating new permanent full-time positions. So this allows us to see what we can get from an expert, and it gives us time to develop our own internal systems around underwriting, loans, and monitoring. I think the big thing we've heard from the council is making sure as we build, we need to make sure that we've got quality and oversight into the work that's being done with the communities. So.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I would, one of the reasons I asked the question, I just had a conversation in the hallway with our deputy auditor regarding the use of ARP funds and being careful not to get into long-term expenses that would eventually have to come out of our operating budget because the ARP money is not going to be there forever. So just want to throw the caution out there once again to everyone that the spigot runs dry on this federal money at some point. So we need to be cognizant of that, especially as we approach budget season.
Appreciate that, Councilman.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mr. Hickey. Sure.
Ms. Rogers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilman Crandall, please note that that is a big piece on our radar, even in our development for the FY 2024 budget. Each of the departments in their first and second rounds of budget development with me and the budget staff, each project, each position, we have discussed what the long-term planning is. Will it be a position or a project that we feel would need to continue after December 2024, which is the first half of fiscal year 25, whether or not the position needs to be built into the budget. And the departments were requested to come with their plans to talk to us about it. So I feel that we've done a good job in managing and assessing what would remain and that we will continue to fund with ARPA money, because our goal is to spend down 100% of our money, but doing that responsibly. So I think that you'll be pleased in how we have worked with each department to address what we call the cliffs.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. Appreciate it.
I have a question also, Chair.
Yes.
Director Hickey, is there, William Rubin, is that an individual or is that a company?
It's an individual.
Okay. Is it possible for the council to get a copy of resume or something like that?
I'll check with, I don't see any reason why not. I've got a copy if there were questions about Mr. Rubin, but I'll defer to Madam Mayo.
Absolutely.
Is that possible? Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to page 1. Wait a minute. Terry Hickey, did you do page 1, Bill 723? You almost got away.
Pulled me right back.
Absolutely.
All right.
Just a reminder that this bill was extended for the next session by the council last legislative session.
Appreciate that, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
So on that, yes, I'm here on behalf of the administration, reintroducing Council Bill 7-23, which would address limitations with the county's existing statute related to accessory apartments, also known as ADUs. The administration included this bill in its first housing package because we believe ADUs, properly utilized, play an important role in efforts to address a growing scarcity of housing for our residents, predominantly seniors. ADUs are an effective tool for older adults looking to age in place, particularly for those who cannot afford to maintain their existing homes without assistance from their families. They can also provide intergenerational living options for families who are still struggling to recover from the effects of the pandemic. Even a slight increase in the use of ADUs for these and similar purposes can help in the larger housing effort by taking some pressure off of a limited housing market where seniors are often forced to compete with working families for affordable rental units. Our existing ADU law, as currently written, is simply not fair to county residents. There is no practical reason to allow ADUs while forcing homeowners to choose between a grandchild and a niece or a nephew, or to bar family members living on the property from making a financial contribution to the operation of the household. These are decisions better left to individual homeowners to decide. As we discussed at the last work session, while ADUs already exist in the county and have for many years, it is not a tool that will work for everyone. There are a lot of steps involved in constructing and maintaining an ADU, and nothing in this amended bill would change that. External accessory buildings, structures, including ADUs, require a public hearing, posting of the property, adhering to a number of limitations related to height, lot, structure size, health infrastructure, and safety factors, not to mention signing a legal declaration disclosing the specific relative or relatives who will be living in the ADU and filing that legal declaration for recordation with land records, all while having to renew the permit every 2 years. This process currently provides ample opportunity for PAI to enforce the law and ensure ADUs are being used for a legally permitted and acceptable purpose. Recent discussions about this bill have served to elevate the very real concerns about illegal rentals. The administration is committed to working with communities and this council on this important issue. We believe it is enforcement efforts that will ultimately make a difference on this front, and not the restriction or limitation of a useful land use tool and family planning tool that our residents may use to address their personal and familiar housing needs. Thank you very much for your consideration of this, and I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you very much. Are any questions or comments from the members? Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Hickey. Question, the council received a map of where our current ADUs are located. And I was just wondering if you or maybe Mr. Gutwald had confidence in the accuracy of that map. And the reason I ask is it looked odd to me in terms of the number and locations of where our existing ADUs were located. So for example, the map showed the majority being in Council District 3 and very low numbers in some of the other districts where you might expect a higher number. Now, it could be a matter of density, and it could be a matter of the amount of land that's available in District 3 relative to some of the other districts. And I wonder if you two could comment on that.
So my only comment would be was that was all the applications we had on file. So the confidence would be that some of these may not be, as noted in the last council work session, may not be active anymore. And so I didn't have data on which ones had been terminated or moved forward any further. So that was a download of all the things that we had on file for applications.
Would there might be ADUs out there that might be acting as an ADU without the county being aware of that activity?
I couldn't speak to that. I mean, it's possible for anything to be acting in a certain, as Director Hickey mentioned about illegal rentals being out there. So they're not, we have individual, situations where they're renting a house and they don't have a registration. And I will tell you also that the laws have changed over the years. So, I mean, again, those were the records we had on file, and that's the best available information I had. So, like I said, I would, the biggest concern, the one thing I know it doesn't reflect is which ones had been terminated. Those were definitely all the applications we had on file.
So it may not reflect those that have been terminated. It also may not reflect those that we just don't know about.
Yeah, whether, remember, this dates back into the early 2000s, so.
And my comments, let me be clear, I'm not trying to be critical here. I'm just trying to understand the map that was sent to us and
Yep.
how to interpret it. So thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments?
I have a
Councilman
question,
Ertel?
Chair. Director Gutwalt, we were talking when this bill was originally introduced about code enforcement and the ability to add additional officers as we, continue to have a lot of things that are going on in the county that we're not dealing with. And this is going to probably add to that as well. Has there been any more discussion about what the budget might be for additional code enforcement officers? I think we're still 15 down from the heyday of 40 under the Rupersberger Smith administrations.
So 5 new positions were added under this current administration a couple of years ago, and we continue to have vacancies right now in that department. There's sort of some between retirements and rollovers and training. We're continuing to fill those positions. Yes, I am in regular conversations with Madam AO during the budget process as to what we may or may not need. But I think we're still in, as I've said in the past to Madam AO, I'm not firing on all cylinders at this point in time. So it's tough for me to make a judgment of what would be needed. Because I don't have full staff because of retirements and people resigning and filling the positions itself. So it's a difficult question to answer, but we have been doing better, and I think it's reflective of the town halls with the number of, as Councilman Crandall has mentioned, the rat complaints have gone way down. A lot of different issues and complaints that we've gotten in code enforcement, and the number of those have gone down, and that we're hearing anecdotally. And I can tell you, I've spoke to my chief of code enforcement about accessory apartments. Anecdotally, he can't think of a time we've gotten a complaint about that situation. We do get complaints about illegal rentals, but not about accessory dwelling apartments.
Okay. Do we have additional budget money for additional officers if they were to be hired? Or are we stuck at 25?
Thank you for that question.
Madam Mayor, I guess you're.
I've had lots of discussions during our budget development sessions about workload impact, particularly for Director Gutwald's organization. We're not stuck at that number, but what I'd say is in our process, as we assess workload impact, if there were a need to increase support for Mr. Gutwald's organization, then we have provisions within our regular operation to do mid-year hires, of course, subject to availability of funds, which we would work diligently to identify the funds. But through a mid-year hire process, we could adjust the support and complement of FTEs if that became the need. It's a natural part of our process. because one doesn't know at the outset exactly what the workload impact is going to be. But I certainly mentioned it several times, that we make sure that we look at that so that we can manage the monitoring and the compliance piece of the legislation.
I would just like to say, for the record, I feel like the code enforcement and dealing with it's not just the code enforcement, it's the follow-up of what we're going to do with a property that's had problems, is one of the biggest things that I'm seeing as a council person in my district. Most of my district is right on top of the city. I think right now I have 58 properties that have some kind of problem. And a lot of our residents are very worried about their quality of life because we don't seem to be able to effectively deal with these problems. And it worries me, honestly. And I feel like my district is one of the, not that it's different than others, but I feel like it might be the canary in the coal mine sometimes because of, our proximity to, it's older communities next to the city. A lot of abandoned houses, a lot of out of control rental properties, hoarding problem, just all kinds of things that are Airbnbs, you name it, we've got it. And we've really got to worry about the quality of life for citizens of Baltimore County. And that's not, I'm just using this opportunity to talk about this because it's just frustrating to watch. And we spend a lot of time and energy trying to help people. And I just hope we can get there as a county.
Well, Councilmember, we're certainly here to work with you hand in hand to address the concerns, your current concerns, of course, and to strategize and effectively problem solve. As I shared in my testimony, that's the biggest part of our job, to work cooperatively together when we identify problems that exist in the community that we can effectively and creatively work together to solve. And I can speak firsthand for Mr. Gartwell's organization, the fine job that they do in doing that when things are presented to us and finding effective resolution. So we look forward to working closely with you on the concerns that you've identified already.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Councilman Ketch.
I am not surprised regarding the number of these units in the third district. And I can tell you that's probably the tip of the iceberg. I know of two situations where people, I've gone to their homes for various reasons, and they say, oh, let me show you. I said, okay, show me what? So anyhow, in both cases, they've shown me within the walls of the current home, they have built apartment units. They put apartment units. They did the plumbing themselves. They had an electrician come in and do the electricity without a permit. And I say to them, I said, you realize if this house burns down, your insurance company probably is not going to cover it because you did not get the proper permit for the electricity. And that if these pipes leak and cause damage, now if you have I forget which way it goes, but I think if you have a slow leak, they don't cover it, or is it a fast leak? It's one or the other, the insurance companies. I just remember all this from being in the legislature. Do you remember if it's slow or, I can't remember.
I can't speak to the insurance on that.
But if you have a leak of some kind and you have no permit from the county, the insurance company will not cover it. And I explained that to them, but it doesn't seem to make any difference. They just go forward. I'm not going to go into the reasons why they go forward, but, we're just making a bad situation worse as far as I'm concerned. And, my concerns about additional septic systems, more stormwater management issues, those kinds of things. The fact that our 3 reservoirs in Baltimore County, each one of them already has levels of various contaminants that are higher than what is considered safe. And if we continue to allow our streams to get dirtier, if we allow trees to be removed, we're only going to complicate this issue. And all of us in here who have city water, I'm going to end up paying more because the water that will be, there's more treatment needed. If you have what I call city water, sometimes the smell is quite strong, other times it's not. Well, it's strong when there's more chemicals in it. And so I just think that we need to be very careful. I am very concerned about the public water system and know that, I've tried to be very responsible when it comes to zoning to make sure that we're not going to add to the problems that we already have in regard to the environment. And I know, especially if we're talking about building separate buildings, that we're going to have a negative impact on the environment. I mean, I know there are stormwater management standards. I know that. They're not exactly up to date in my view. And as far as trees go, if someone's going to pull trees down, to plant those trees somewhere else doesn't quite have the effect of where they were originally, especially if they're near a stream, et cetera. So, I just think we're making a terrible mistake to allow this to go on in our rural areas outside of the Erdl. When you think about it, the homes within the Erdl don't have septic systems. They don't pollute like the septic systems in northern Baltimore County do. And when we talked about the tree issue the other day, I'm very concerned about making certain that trees remain, that they are allowed to do the job that they're intended to do, and that is to clean the water. So, to me, this is just another way to have increased density in the rural areas. And I think it's a terrible mistake, especially with all the millions we've spent on preserving land and considering the fact that on these farms that are preserved, about an acre or so is set aside for the home. Well, that land is not restricted. I mean, we can have one of these units built on that land or addition to a house, et cetera. So I just think it's not the right way to go. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? We have a couple of speakers. Let's see, are they virtually? Chris?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Our first speaker is Thomas Glancy. Mr. Glancy, you're on as a panelist. You may begin your testimony. Mr. Glancy,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Oh, okay, great.
You could turn your camera on it as well.
Thank you. My name's Tom Glancy. I'm a resident of District 6, and I want to thank you for providing me with this opportunity to speak in favor of Bill 7-23, which would expand the universe of persons who are permitted to reside in accessory apartments from immediate family members only to all family members, while retaining all of the other restrictions under current county law. This modest legislation would pose no significant additional burdens on the county, but it could significantly improve the lives of many of our citizens who live in or who hope to live in Baltimore County. There's an undeniable shortage of affordable housing in the county, and soaring rents have made it difficult, if not impossible, for persons of modest means to live and work here without assistance. Therefore, the opportunity to stay with a relative can often mean the difference between taking or declining an employment offer or remaining in one of our local colleges, not to mention the profound difference it can make in the lives of our elderly residents. Moreover, not only does the proposed legislation represent a more humane approach to these scenarios than does existing law, there are benefits for the county as well, as it expands the pool of potential employees for our businesses, provides local merchants with a larger customer base, and will increase the county's tax base. As I understand it, Baltimore County is the only jurisdiction in this state that restricts tenants of accessory apartments to immediate family members. And what those other jurisdictions appear to appreciate is that the distinction between immediate and remote family members is often an arbitrary one. In many families, cousins are as close to one another as our siblings, and grandparents and grandchildren are no less cherished than the more immediate family members. In my family, for example, I had a cousin whom we considered as much a member of our family as if she were one of my siblings. To my parents, she was often treated as if she was their fifth child. Now, had my cousin lost her job and needed a place to stay while she got back on her feet, under current law, I could maybe let her sleep on my couch, but I could not have offered her lodging in an accessory apartment. And that just doesn't make any sense to me. And for those reasons, as well as reasons that I expect to be advanced by other supporters of this legislation, I urge the council to pass Bill 723. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Glancy. Appreciate your comments and taking the time to share them with us. Chris?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our next speaker is Peter Richgis. Ms. Richgis, you are on as a panelist. You can unmute yourself and turn your camera on,
Peter who?
or both.
Oh.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Jones and members of the council, and ditto to the remarks of Tom Glancy. But I'd like to add just a few other comments to express my support for Bill 723, accessory apartments. The over 65 population in Baltimore County is over 150,000 and growing. And more than half of that population is female, like me, so I can relate. Our older residents need more options for housing opportunities, and so do our families. As Tom mentioned, Baltimore County is the only Maryland jurisdiction that restricts ADU occupancy to immediate family. We should be updating the code regulating ADUs, and Bill 723 does that. It makes the restriction family related by blood, marriage, or adoption, which is comparable to other jurisdictions in Maryland. This does not open the floodgates. To delay full implementation of ADUs for a 2 or 3 pilot, as has been suggested, is unnecessary and a disservice to families. We should be incentivizing accessory apartments, not restricting their construction. I think that the concerns raised have been addressed. Clearly, the concern about enforcement has been underscored, and I urge the council to vote aye in favor of Bill 723. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Richards. Appreciate your comments and taking the time to share them with us. Any additional questions, comments from the members? Hearing none, we'll move on to page 3, Ms. Stacy Rogers. Bill 8-23.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. I am pleased to present this evening on behalf of the County Executive, Bill 8-23. This bill accomplishes the following purposes. The bill creates a proposed executive compensation plan for employees in the exempt service as required by the charter per Bill number 1718 passed in 2018. Charter Section 505 was amended to require that officers and employees in the exempt service, as defined by Charter Section 801, have their compensation determined by a compensation plan recommended by the county executive and adopted by the county council. This bill satisfies that requirement. The bill also provides for the discretionary granting of permission leave with pay to senior executive county employees. This codifies the interim transition policy for senior executives exiting from county employment approved on July 25th, 2022 by me, the county administrative officer, with the concurrence of the county executive. I want to thank Mr. Boswick and Ms. Lauren Schmelkinson for their diligent work with us as we prepared the proposed executive compensation plan. As this was a requirement, we secured assistance from a national consulting firm, HR consulting firm. The project consultant's market research analysis was utilized to develop the recommended salary ranges. The salary ranges are based on the project consultant's projected market research at the 50th percentile pay ranges for comparable jurisdictions. And I do want to note several items with respect to the proposed plan. Subsection 1 of 804, the section 801 of the charter lists a number of positions that we did provide proposed salary ranges for, but we note that those salaries are governed by other entities. The county executive salary is set by the county council pursuant to Charter Article 4, Section 405. The county council members' salaries are recommended by the PSAB pursuant to state and county law. The county sheriff is governed by state law, and it indicates that the county sheriff's salary is set by state code, Maryland code. And this analysis will be shared with the state for their consideration and all other parties that govern salary setting. And also the state's attorney. State law dictates that the state's attorney's salary is set by Maryland Constitution, Article 5, 9, and the Maryland Criminal Procedures Code 15-404. This information will also be shared with the state for their consideration. But in that these positions were listed in Section 801 of the Charter, we complied with the requirements to provide a proposed compensation plan for all positions identified in the charter if they existed. And I'm pleased to answer any questions about the proposed compensation plan.
Any questions or comments from the member? Ms. Rock? Did you have it? Okay, I guess I had one question, Ms. Rogers.
Yes.
This is a result of the statute that we passed some time ago.
Yes, sir.
And I was just curious, how did members of the Police Accountability Board become something to make a recommendation on?
Because in the section 801, it's all boards and commissions are required. And at the time that we undertook this endeavor, the Police Accountability Board was a recognized board.
I think, I remember us debating this issue just recently when we just made this board. And part of the issue was we have all these other boards that do just as much important work that we don't know what the Police Accountability Board are going to do. We know how many hours and what long work they do. So we decided that there may be like a slippery slope if we paid one and didn't pay the others. But it looks like, based on what I'm looking at, the decision was made to give them a stipend. What about the other boards?
There are some boards that are reflected that we do provide stipends for. We've reflected all boards, excuse me, that we currently provide stipends for within the document. Any board that currently receives a stipend, we were required to list that board.
But that board didn't receive a stipend. That board there was no stipend for that. Police Accountability Board.
Yes, the Police Accountability Board has a stipend.
I don't think we didn't put a stipend in there.
Do you want me to? In the bill that established the PAB, the council did not provide for compensation.
We're happy to go back and check our records on the administrative side, but there is a stipend.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments?
Chair.
Yes.
Just
Councilman
one
Patel.
quick comment. And this might be a nonsensical statement, but I think when we all looked at this originally, the thought process was that this is a range of salaries and not necessarily, I think if the public looked at this, they might think that this is instantly, oh, well, everybody's getting a pay raise from, I'm just making this up, 80,000 to 100,000, but a lot of these are ranges. So I'm just reiterating that's what we're doing here is we're setting a range of salaries based on those job descriptions.
Yes, sir, but I'll articulate that if you look at the full summary and the market analysis and what the projected impact for currently for this, you're correct, this is a range, but the projected impact, current impact, really has to do with individuals who are currently below the base. That's the impact. So it's trying to arrive at equity for individuals who are in certain classifications. And when the market research was done, they're not at the base salary. So this particular iteration, while it establishes the ranges, the impact, the immediate impact in terms of what the summary, the estimated cost was to address those who are below the base. But then this is the summary that you can look at with respect to how increases would be given.
Okay. Do we know, is there, I don't know about a fiscal note, but do we know what the impact, once we pass this, what those employees that are below the base, what will that be the bottom line for the county to pay?
Yes, sir. Let me find that piece. It is in the fiscal note.
It is, okay.
But I can find it. 300 and, Philip, did you have that in front of you? Because if you look at the backup data, it shows those positions that were below the base, but we can use this position in addressing and addressing salaries moving forward, because we well know that in a lot of instances, we are currently non-competitive. And I might add that this is a small part of a larger project that we're working on. This part we had to move forward with because candidly, we did not know about the 2018 legislation. But when it was brought to our attention, because that legislation was actually passed in February of 2018, when the administration changed in December. Well, yeah, the referendum happened in the fall, but the legislation happened in February. So when the referendum passed and the administrations changed, there was no articulation that this must be implemented. So fast forward to the spring of 2019. When I came April 1st of 2019. There still was no, articulation that we needed to do this. So when it came up this past summer and we were alerted about it, we set this aside as a small project. But what we're doing right now, well, it is really a very labor-intensive project. And I want to thank our consultants who helped us work on this, because you have to do position by position across the various jurisdictions. But we're working on a comprehensive enterprise-wide classification and compensation study to see where we are with all 900 classifications here in the county. And that's going to take us a year to complete. We've started with the public safety sector because we needed that market research to help with our negotiations, and that's going well. And then we've taken some specific classifications where we absolutely are non-competitive when it comes to hiring engineers and other technical positions. Literally, it is just unrealistic to think that we're going to hire a engineer one for $88,000 in this competitive region. So we're working on all of those pieces that would then come forward as a part of our proposed budget. But it's going to take us a year to finish everything because it's a comprehensive plan. So you'll see movement that way. What is base salary based on the 50th percentile, meaning that we will pay at or above 50% of other jurisdictions. That's what it means.
Right. And I was in no way questioning how it was done. We do know, we obviously know we have certain classes of employees who fall into this study that are being paid below, that we don't have a competitive salary, as you say. But it also is not necessarily, if you were to look at this from a public standpoint, it doesn't necessarily mean that someone's salary is immediately going to jump to the max.
Absolutely.
Is all I'm saying.
Yes, sir.
Just for clarification, if anyone looks at this outside
Absolutely.
outside this sphere, right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I can add on to Mr. Ertel's comments.
Absolutely.
We've had to, thank you. We've had to answer a few questions as this bill became public that didn't the county council just give itself a raise? And it looks, if you look at this chart, it looks as if that is what we're doing, but we're not, in essence, giving anyone a raise. Is that's correct, Madam CEO? I said that with Mr. Ertel's comment that from the optics of this, from a public's perspective, they're looking at the bill as it became public, and we had to answer some questions in our district. Well, wait a second, didn't the council just vote a raise for itself and for the county executive and for your position? And so if you look at the beginning of that chart, member county council, $78,000. Well, that's not the salary of a council member currently.
Yes, sir.
Right. And the council would still have its ability to give itself a raise as we have traditionally in the past?
Yes, sir. This is just to set our scale on what is comparable to other jurisdictions, because that's what the legislation asks that we present, the county executive present for council approval. All of the positions outlined in 801 of the charter. So excuse me, in this instance, council members are a part of the defined group in Section 801. We followed Section 801 to the letter. And so my position is, this shows us, if you look at the backup data, this shows us where we ranked. Ms. Milkinson and Mr. Boswick, I don't know if the council members saw the market research with the ranking, that they have that backup data, because it shows us where we ranked in comparison to our sister jurisdictions, Prince George's, Montgomery, Howard, Baltimore City, I think Anne Arundel, and the state of Maryland. It showed our rankings, and I thought that that was telling in terms of where we rank compared to everyone else. So the scales just at least bring us all up to standard of where we could be compensated by the appropriate body who, that's why I said at the beginning that these subsections that are in 801 are governed by other entities. But at least this is a scale that when decisions are being made, they're looking at what is reasonable in terms of compensation based on the 50th percentile in this region. And it was really telling. So I would suggest if you go back and look at the market data, the research data, and I asked our consultant to put us in there. You know, it's one thing to get the data on everybody else, but it's another thing to place us in the data and see where we fall. And in a lot of instances, in many positions, we were at the bottom.
So thank you. I looked through the fiscal note and I don't see a dollar amount in the fiscal note. And maybe our auditors might want to chime in.
At the end of the
on what
note.
I didn't see it at the end of the note.
It's in the first sentence of the last paragraph.
Yes, point 3.
About,
Oh, I got it. Okay. I'm sorry. That was my oversight. 0.3 million for this budget,
If
This year.
If this were be.
FY24?
Meaning that what that represents are the individuals that are below the base. They're not even at the base projected salary or proposed salary. So aligning that. But what it does give us is a scale to use in terms of when salary decisions are made, that this is resetting the scales. Just like the larger project will do, it will reset the scales in terms of what compensation should be in our county. Because our scales have not been reset or recalibrated to the current market for 12 years. And that's why we're losing candidates, because you'll have a candidate come, let's use an engineer, and the starting salary or the highest salary that we can offer based on our current scales is $88,000. And that person is saying, well, say they're in another position somewhere else, they're saying, I can't take a pay cut to come work in Baltimore County. Or they're saying, oh, I won't accept that salary. These scales will now calibrate us to be able to say, this is what an appropriate salary would be.
Okay, so that point is probably 0.3 million, so 300,000 plus.
Yes.
That will be reflected in the operating budgets of each agency
Correct. Where if.
across countywide agencies.
Well, we're not at countywide yet, because this was just the executive. This represents everybody reflected in the exempt service. If there is a position in an agency that's a part of exempt service and they're under, they're not at the base salary, yes, if this is approved, yes, we're able to begin to calibrate that for July 1st.
Okay, I guess what I meant by countywide was that this would be reflected in the operating budgets of the exempt employees in the various agencies
Yes.
that are not really, that the salaries are at the, below the minimum range.
Say it one more time.
So the 300,000+ will be reflected in the operating budgets of each agency.
Yes.
That would be,
Wherever
and they
those
would,
positions fall.
okay, would those, when we're presented the budget, would those be presented to us as raises for certain positions, or are they just going to be, they can be itemized like that in the budget? Will we know
Yeah, it's
which positions are going to be moving up in salary?
for this particular project, yes, we would be able to show what
Okay.
increases, because this is only representing about 900 positions. Well, 800 and some positions across the exempt service driven by the charter section 801. That's all that is reflected here. We have a larger project that we're working on that will replicate the same thing later. But this is only the exempt service.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
so that I can get this clear in my mind regarding the council's salaries, we now earn, I think, 69,000 a year. Is that it? I think.
I believe.
Let me go back.
I see, I make that. Because I'm not surprised. When I was first elected to the legislature, everybody made 12,500 except for me and two others who made $3,500 a year because I was a teacher. And they had to pass a constitutional amendment, so I would be paid the same salary as the rest of the legislature. So I'm used to it, see? No. Quickly, our salary is 69,000, and for the law office, is it true that for this term, that we cannot increase our salary?
That is my understanding.
Okay.
Chairman Jones and I have talked about this, what options that we have, because again, as I read, the council salaries are governed by another entity. We can put together the scales, but you, the council, does not have the authority on all of the positions. The state's attorney, who's here this evening, the sheriff, when you look at the market research on the sheriffs, definitely at the bottom. I was shocked. The market research really brought out some things that, we have not, it's just kind of been a sleeper, if you will, but the sheriff's salary is at the bottom in terms of jurisdictions our size. So, but you are correct. We can give this data, but we can't, or you can't totally enact it based on the current legislation.
I thought so. Now, the other 6 members of the county council are interested in giving me a significant bonus. And is that allowed? They're talking about 6 figures.
I have no knowledge, Councilmember Catch, anywhere in the charter, even though I consult the charter frequently for authority.
It's a
by one
bonus,
authority.
a bonus.
I see no authority that I have to
We'll find
do so, or that your colleagues have, because your salaries are governed by another entity.
Yeah, this is typical. You show up late for a meeting and then you ask for a raise.
6 figures.
But I say that to say it was a necessary exercise. I wish we had known about it beforehand, but in that we put it together, it really revealed some things that we did need to take this necessary step. And for the other part of the work, for all of the other employees here in Baltimore County, we're looking at each and every classification because it's been 12 years. Let's think about that. 12 years and the scales haven't been reexamined or recalibrated. Many of our peer jurisdictions have done this. Prince George's County completed theirs, Anne Arundel completed theirs, I think 2 years ago. So it's something that you have to do periodically to make sure that you're competitive, that you're marketable. So I'm really, again, very pleased with the product and the cooperative working relationship, again, a joint endeavor with Ms. Smelkinson and with our council secretary, diligently looking at each piece of this to make sure that we were understanding this correctly and presenting a viable plan to you for consideration.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Young?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Rogers, for you and your team for putting this together. You've explained multiple times the reasoning and the purpose for why this has been presented and your charge for doing so. And I get that part, and I get the importance of one having a scale that meets market needs. This is about retention, it's about recruitment, and bringing the best and brightest to Baltimore County. And having a scale is pretty standard, so folks know what their ranges are, and hiring managers know where they can start, where they can go within a range. I think that our conversations since seeing the bill have been more, we have two-tiered folks here. As just been described, people that we will be raised to meet the minimum, and then there are other folks, based on the charge from the original legislation that had to be included in this, that it's making recommendations that have no action whatsoever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's part of where our, a lot of these questions are coming from in terms of we're passing something that we know applies to certain groups and should, in most cases, and then doesn't apply to another group, which then would look like be perceived as something else. Or we haven't given ourselves a raise now, but now we're telling the legal body, or by law, the body that will determine our salaries later, that it should be much higher than it is. And again, I'm just saying this is what could be interpreted where we're having these discussions now, where, based on the reality, you're doing what your charge was. Ours is looking at the reality in terms of our budgets. For instance, our senior aides, I think the number is 94,000 for a starting, which, they worked very hard, and I think all of our senior aides deserve that. But in terms of the budget we have now, we couldn't afford to pay our staff or our senior staff that, and pay our other staffers, in some cases in our offices, because we'd be out of funds. So we're looking at this reality as it is right now, not just about the budget increase, but in terms of our offices, how does that apply after the bill's passed to meeting what the recommendation is, and whether we need to have a discussion for the next session or in passing the bill, whether that needs to be looked at in terms of what we can actually afford to do from a real time right now, what our budgets look like. And just last thing, and I haven't seen the market analysis that you had referenced. I'd love to see some.
Sure.
Because I think it would help with some of this. And just flagging, because I don't understand it, and either you can explain or maybe we can take a look at the data and talk offline. The IT consulting services is at $780 an hour, and the highest is $1,056. I don't work in IT, and I'm not claiming to be an expert. I just, in terms of working on legislation related to our cybersecurity and IT services, I haven't seen anything about 350. So I'm not understanding all of it, and I'm trusting that and want to take a look at the data and have a conversation. So,
absolutely.
Sorry for the comment and not the question, but at the end of the day, that's sort of where I think we still have these conversations, still some questions we want to
I'm happy to share the market research, because that showed us where we ranked with every position that we were required to do. And Councilmember Young, I totally get where you're coming from, because remember, those of us who had to work on this, we were like, okay, 801 says these are the positions. And do you follow what the legislation, the original legislation that was passed in 2018 said, follow 801, which put us in the conundrum of, okay, if you follow 801 to the letter, and that's what we did, we followed 801, we then had to put the caveats in that we don't, the executive branch doesn't have authority over it. And then in this case, someone else has authority over setting up your salaries as well. But my understanding of the law as an MPA is you follow the letter of the law that you're directed when you're doing a project. You follow the letter of the law.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any additional comments or questions? Councilman Patoka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Rogers. So just to be abundantly clear on this issue.
Waterford? Crystal
so-
clear?
Yes. So while this legislation says that the minimum salary for a council member is $78,000, the reality is that a council member makes 9% below the minimum listed here. And I just want to make that clear
Correct.
that this is not a raise for county council. In fact, the county council members make 9% below what is listed here. That's point one. Point two, when you say exempt employees across the board, are you referring to non-merit employees?
No, not in this instance. If you go back to section 505 of Article 5, and then it leads you back to 801, because we went back and forth on this several times. Exempt service in section 801 of the charter, and is subject to merit system provisions. It is, 801 lists them out. There are 9 areas for this purpose, for exempt service. All elected officials, and that's how the sheriff and the state's attorney, there are elected officials.
Oh,
You are.
I got that, Ms. Rogers. I really was referring to when you said you were going to look at the system-wide.
Oh, you mean in our larger project?
Yes.
Not this. Yes, it's.
So
every-
does that mean non-merit, when you say exempt, are you referring to non-merit employees?
That will not have, in the enterprise-wide classification and compensation study,
Yes,
it had, no, it's everybody.
it's both merit
It
and
has
non-merit.
no- Right, because the scales for merit and non-merit, we finally have scales for non-merit employees. At one time, we did not really have.
Oh, I remember. I was a non-merit employee a long time ago.
Right, so was kind of like the NFL.
Yeah.
So in pennies. But at the end of the day, the larger scale is based on a classification. What is your job? What do you do? And in a region, in market research, how much does that job pay? Then you come back and you apply it to merit and non-merit scale. That's how you can use the scales, the range, to be equitable. Because at the end of the day, you shouldn't have huge inequities between what you compensate a person for in doing their job based on whether they're merit or non-merit. Even though non-merit employees in the past, there was a little more flexibility, if you will, which is reasonable, but it shouldn't be $10,000, $15,000 or $20,000. I'm just using as a round number, because 2 people doing a job should be compensated, and that's what classification and compensation is supposed to do. That's what HR does. What is the compensation rate for doing this job?
Okay, thank you. And then my last point is to understand how we move forward on this. So in the budgeting process, one of the first steps is the budget office will reach out, or some entity, maybe it's the executive office, I don't know. It used to be the budget office, would reach out to each agency and say, here's your mark.
We do that.
You still do that, okay. So agency, budget
We call it
directors.
target now.
Target, okay. Mark or target. So I like target better. So in any case, that's step one. And so the agencies receive that target and they start working on their budget based on that target. And so that's happened, that's already happened. And so now for us as a council and for other agencies that have employees that are listed in this, on these charts, they receive this after they receive their targets. So were the targets given to the agencies to include the salary, to match the salary ranges that are in this piece of legislation, or should the agencies be submitting over the target requests in order to address the new information that was received by the agencies after they were given their targets?
Okay, so let's break it down in two ways. For this endeavor, what we're putting forward, this recalibrates the scales. Okay, so we'll know what compensation should look like here in Baltimore County compared to the rest of our peers. The estimated 300,000 plus that's here, merely on this part was try to get people to the base, because some people are under the base. For other salaries going forward, it won't happen right away. It's going to have to happen, in a phased approach, because it's expensive. In terms of what we're looking at would be the increase, just like the state of Maryland. Perfect example, the state of Maryland, to try to get them to a competitive position, identified that a 4% raise would move their scale up. That's what they did. Some jurisdictions do it that way. For us, because we have to do the market research for all of the positions over the next year, well, it started already. It started in September. And we're dealing with the bargaining units on the public safety side. Then we would recalibrate those positions. Then we, probably between the FY24 and 25 budget, we recalibrate positions based on what the market research is telling us. The state took a wholesale percentage, but yes, it would be factored into their budget.
So then we, if I'm understanding you, so we should submit as a council an over the target request to address this.
Well, I would say from the standpoint of your employees who are impacted here, this part that we're giving is based on getting people, what we're looking at for this first phase of it, is getting people to those that need to get to the base.
But even if, so for me, your example of the state was good. So if you get a 3 or 4% COLA, and then typically the target or mark or has a 4% increase in it, otherwise it's a cut, and sometimes addressed through turnover. I don't think have a lot of turnover in council, so we're unable to address budget shortfalls through turnover, or I guess shortfall is the right term, through turnover. And because we're a small agency, turnover is much more difficult for a small agency. I still am really concerned that this chart cannot be addressed properly. And I'll say this, I'm kind of working in the blind because I'm not the person that does the budget for the council, but I understand a little bit about budgeting processes. I'm just concerned that in trying to address these that, and now Chair and Secretary will give me guidance on this in terms of kind of getting it square in my head, that we're going to be facing a cut if we don't have that over the target requests because our target is too low to address what's on this chart. I hope I'm being.
Well, Councilmember Patoka, we work cooperatively together to address the resource needs that your department has. And if this legislation were to be approved, then we would rightfully so look at who's impacted, particularly staff. That first cut is trying to get people to the base, because that's where the 300 and some thousand came from, the people who weren't even at the base. And then moving forward in fiscal years to come, what the increases will be, because it's an expensive endeavor that has to be done over a period of time to get us there.
All right, well, I'll get out of the council realm and talk about like an agency. So let's say an agency that might have a large number of employees that fit in this category. And like, let's say the state's attorney's office, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So in that case, if there's a significant number of employees that are below the minimum, and we're trying to bring, and so that agency has built its budget based on last year's budget, because we're not doing zero-based budgeting, we're kind of doing year-by-year budgeting, I believe. So based on last year's budget, there was, and whatever COLAs are out there, there's an increase. And if they have a significant number of employees that are below the minimum, and now they have to address that, should that agency be requesting an over the target request?
If the council sees fit to approve the proposed plan, the executive compensation plan that you required us to do in the 2018 legislation, then we will adjust those salaries. We can't adjust them until we have a new scale.
Okay, so you'll adjust the salaries, got it. But what about the revenues to cover those salaries?
Costs more money.
Yeah, will that be adjusted?
Yes, because you can't, it's like the chicken or the egg. We have to have a new scale in order to address that issue.
But this will authorize you to be able to address it budgetarily. Is that what you're saying?
Did you say the state?
I said this, if this is passed, then this will authorize the budget office to allocate additional funds to address.
Right, because we have a new scale to work by. Right now, we are limited to the scale, and believe me, we have discussions all the time with various departments about the pay compression, what we can pay when people get offers from somewhere else, what we can pay. But we are stuck in a scale that's been the same for 12 years.
Right, okay, I get that. I think I'm understanding it, that we're kind of in a gray area where we might be able to get there, but we need to pass this legislation to get there.
This will cover the exempt service, the 801, everybody listed in 801. Positions are spelled out. Those positions can be looked at for adjustments, legitimate adjustments, yes. But
Okay.
it costs more money.
Right, and that's where there's a disconnect. So I understand it costs more money, so the bill is higher. Will we put money in if this were home and you got a bill that was higher, would you put more money in your checking account to pay that check that you just wrote?
We have to budget for that.
Okay, thank you.
Just say it this way, we are anticipating what we need to do in the budget.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. I'm sorry to make it so complicated, but I was just trying to understand it from the mechanics that are required to make this happen.
Mr.
We have a
Chairman.
few pennies tucked away.
Thank you.
Councilman Cat?
Yeah, thank you very much. I just have a statement to make. We all know that government's number one responsibility is public safety. That's number one. And I hear the word comparable. I hope that in the very near future, that any county agency that deals with public safety, that the salaries that we offer will exceed the so-called comparable salaries, because we have got to attract the most qualified, effective individuals to these positions. We know we have vacancies in both the police department, we have it in the fire department, we have it in the 911 center. I can't answer for the state's attorney if he has vacancies or not. 4 vacancies. I guess you're wondering how I know it's 4. He's right there.
I know he's there. We talk frequently about
So,
these matters.
I'm sorry, what?
I said we talk frequently about these matters.
Okay, so, I think that we need to offer these individuals who are the highly qualified an offer they can't refuse. Basically, that, before things really begin to turn and get bad. I can't tell you the number of calls I'm getting from constituents who live close to Towson. Councilman Hurtel, no, I mean, it's the case. And so, I think this has got to be the top priority. And I know it is with the CE, and I'm sure it is with you as well, but I've gotten to the point where I just think we're developing a real problem, and we need to find a solution to it. And so hopefully.
Councilmember Katz, you definitely have a page out of my playbook, so you must be reading my book.
Good.
That's why we started with the public safety sector of the class and compensation study.
Heard that, yeah.
We started with them. Our goal is a part of the negotiations. We're looking at their scales as well. That's why we started with them. The market research was given to the bargaining units to, see where our comparables are so that we can negotiate with the public safety sector, which does include public safety, fire, police, corrections, sheriff, and 911 center. They came out the process up front.
And my advice is to exceed the comparables.
The
So-
comparables was based on, when I say that, it's the comparisons to the other jurisdictions.
Well, I understand.
That's what we're doing. But again, we have scales that have been in place for 12 years that we had to recalibrate, but you have to recalibrate on something.
Sure.
That's why we had to do the class and compensation study. And I'm pleased to lead that work.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? We do have a speaker. Chris?
Mr. Schellenberger is here to address us this afternoon.
Sure.
It's always good to see you, Mr. Schellenberg. Sure.
So here's Exhibit 1, today's Daily Record. An advertisement for an assistant state's attorney in Caroline County, $75,000. Guess what? That's 10 grand more than I started an assistant at.
How many do they have?
They have very few. Their office is probably less than 12. I have 13 ASA 1s. I have 47 assistant state's attorneys who will be directly affected by just this bill. I have another 15 that we have to talk about. But let me just give you an example. So this is Exhibit 1. You can go to Caroline County and start $10,000 higher. Last Friday, I had an assistant state's attorney who's been a lawyer less than 60 days who is going to Prince George's County for a $15,000 raise. He said, Scott, I got my student loans. I got to go. He has family in the D.C. area, so he can go down there. So this is extremely vital to us. But here's how I can give you an example of how all this affects. This bill allegedly changes my salary. But as Ms. Rogers explained, you can set whatever you want on this comparison chart. But to change my salary, I have to go to Annapolis and get Criminal Procedure 15404 changed, which I did in 2010. But I would have to go down to Annapolis to get it changed. So you can write whatever you want on this form about what my salary should be. I would have to do something else to get it changed. So then let's move to the next example. 801, because it was before, lists deputy state's attorneys, assistant state's attorney 1, assistant state's attorney 2, and assistant state's attorney 3. So you are only changing the salaries of those 4 places. I also have senior trial assistants and division chiefs, 15 lawyers who were not in 801. And Ms. Rogers and I have had conversations, and she's assured me that those 15 will be in this study that's currently going on. And the reason that's so important is those 15 are my top lawyers. They're the ones who are going to try the Towson case that happened to the Circle with the 3 young women. They're the ones that are going to try the guy who shot the detectives as he chased across Cockeysville and into Harford County. Those are my senior trial assistants. Those are my division chiefs. My division chiefs lead the domestic violence unit, the sexual assault unit, the narcotics unit. They are the big ones, the ones who lead the murder unit. And so we do need to come back to you in the future so we can get those folks included in this. But that's what this is doing. So my ASA 1s, all 13 of them will immediately, once the budget is there, and I'll address your issues about the money, all of those 13 will immediately go from 65 to 77, starting at the bottom. And that will have me be able to keep people like the ASA who on Friday told me he was leaving to go to get a raise. Because now you're going to give them the raise that they deserve. And you're going to put them at a level that is comparable to the metropolitan area with a range that will be comparable to the metropolitan area. So that's very important. So one, you can put whatever you want for my salary. I got to go to Annapolis and change that. I don't intend to do that. I'm very happy with where my salary is. This needs to be passed. So ASA 1s, 2s, 3s have the ability to go up, particularly the 1s. I'll be able to immediately hire those 4 openings that I have. 4 openings. I believe that extra $12,000, $13,000 will make a huge difference in my ability to give them a raise. And we are looking forward to the reclassification of the next folks, the 15 assistant state's attorneys, who are some of my most senior people and how important they are. I think this is really important for public safety. The police can arrest, the detention center can hold them, but until I convict them and put them in jail, then it doesn't do anything for public safety. It's only a quick fix. And my ability to take an individual who robbed and sexually assaulted 3 young women near the Towson Circle just 2 weekends ago, my ability to put that person in jail for the rest of their life is extremely important to the citizens of Baltimore County. So I hope I've kind of given you realistic examples of how all of this affects. I very much appreciate this effort. 47 of my lawyers will be moving up a little bit. I'll be happy to come back and see you again to tell you about the other 15. In fact, it's all very easy. If you look at the chart here, ASA 1s are a 5, ASA 2s are a 6, ASA 3s are a 7, and my deputy's a 10. Senior trial assistant can be a 9, and 8, and division chief can be a 9. So it all fits right within the classification system that the administration has already set up. So I didn't mean to be so vehement, but I'm passionate about my folks, but I also think it brings home how much this works for everybody.
Thank you very much. I see Councilman Marks with a comment.
Ms. Rogers.
Oh, no.
First.
Well,
Or
let me,
I'll go,
well,
yeah.
well, let me go first. Mr. Schellenberger, I want to thank you so much for your hard work and the hard work of your staff. There's no doubt about it. One of the things that I like so much about you and your team is you're very aggressive in prosecuting violent criminal offenders who prey on the citizens of Baltimore County. And I thank you very much for that.
I thank you.
Now, Ms. Rogers?
I want to thank Mr. Schellenberger and his staff for working with us, but what I've pointed out to Mr. Schellenberger in terms of what I just said earlier, what do the people do? What is the classification? What is the work? In the charter, in 801, Section 6, all attorneys at law. I just want to point to that. Our consultant shared with us that we had a little bit of a flat structure, and they recommended to us that we would do a assistant county attorney 1, 2, and 3. I asked Mr. Schellenberger, are your attorneys, are these staff attorneys? Because clearly we can compensate them on an attorney line that best fits their compensation. So we do have a mechanism for doing that. In doing the work, Mr. Schellenberger brought to our attention that they had the deputy state's attorneys. And so we went back to the consultants to see if we could put in the same kind of tiering, because this is going to give us the opportunity to look at people's skills and experiences. But why I shared with Mr. Schellenberger, there's a way to work with his staff on everyone is because the charter 801 does say all attorneys at law, meaning across the enterprise. So you have to work with what you have sometime, but the positions that Mr. Schellenberger is correct, the positions that he cited for the other staff, they were not included in Section 801. That's why they did not reflect in the document, but we do feel that we have the ability to address the compensation needs for his staff under item 6, all attorneys at law.
Okay, thank you.
And I thank you and I accept that.
Thank you. Councilman Marks?
I'll just be very brief. Thank you, Mr. Schellenberger, for articulating one of the best reasons to adopt this legislation. And thank you for your service to Baltimore County. This is a good government package, reflects the will of the voters who asked us to put this system in place. And it also brings us in parallel structure with the state, which has an executive service. So all around, I think this is a good step moving forward.
Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions, comments? Hearing none, thank you very much, Mr. Schellenberger.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Well, last but certainly not least, page 6, Bill 9-23, Councilman Patoka and Catch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bill 923 is a bill to expand veterinary uses in the ML zone. And this also will include veterinary uses in the Bear Hills Industrial Park. This was vetted with the RRLRAIA, and some people may say, what is the RRLRAIA? And that is the Ruxton Riderwood Lake Roland Area Improvement Association. So I think that this is something that will provide a service to pet owners in Center County, in Northern County, in all parts of Baltimore County. And so that's why I would urge my colleagues to support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilman Katz, do you have any comments on the bill?
Yes, yes, I do. A very similar bill to this, I introduced a couple of years ago, and it was passed by the council, and it deals with an emergency veterinary clinic in Lubbock. Thank you.
And thank you for co-sponsoring, Councilman Katz.
Thank you. We have two speakers.
Mr. Chair, before we get to speakers,
I'm
may I ask
sorry,
a quick
Councilman.
question?
Sure.
Just out of curiosity to the sponsors, did you consider making the bill countywide instead of the Hunt Valley Focal Point area as defined in the master plan and the Bear Hills Industrial Park?
I certainly would consider it, no doubt. We wanted to not have any collateral impact in any of the districts that our council members represent.
Sure. Well, I can respect that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have two speakers, Mr. Chair. Our first speaker is Marshall Glenn. Mr. Glenn, you are a panelist. You can turn your camera on and begin your testimony.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and County Council members. I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony about this important legislation. So my name is Marshall Glenn, and I'm the hospital director at Falls Road Animal Hospital. At Falls Road, we're very proud of the fact that we've been servicing the community since 1954, almost 70 years now. And we're also very proud of the fact that we were just the third veterinary hospital in the nation to offer 24-hour emergency services. But as you can imagine, over the years, unfortunately, we have outgrown our current site. And about a year and a half ago, we started looking for sites in the area that would be suitable to build a state-of-the-art facility. But we found some of the zoning restrictions making it very difficult to find a possible site. We have found a site on Clarkview Road that would require this limited exemption. It's a 14,000 square foot facility. We'd be looking to invest around $4 million in this site to build this facility so that we can continue to service the Baltimore County and surrounding areas that we've done for so long. I'm certainly available to answer any questions that anyone might have, and I urge you for your support in this important legislation. Thank you so much.
Well, we thank you, Mr. Glenn, and certainly appreciate your investment here in Baltimore County, and hopefully we can make it work for you. 1 second, sir.
Is it Mr. Glenn or Dr. Glenn?
It is Mr. Glenn.
Mr. Glenn, well, I just want to thank you and your facility. I had the unfortunate experience of having to take a dog to your clinic in the middle of the night many years ago, and your people saved our dog. So thank you so much for your efforts, and I look forward to seeing your business expand. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we're glad we could be there for you.
All right, thank you very much for calling in, Mr. Glenn, and again, thanks for your investment, and thank you for sharing your concerns with us. Next speaker, Chris.
Our next speaker is Chris Mudd. Mr. Mudd, you are on as a panelist.
Good evening, members of the council. Good to see everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. I here am also in support of this legislation. And as Councilman Patoka and Councilman Catch indicated, this is actually the second time now. Actually, it's really the third time that we've attempted to amend the zoning regulations to allow for this type of a use to be in the ML zone. We first did it with Councilman Catch, and at that point in time, we went to Councilman Catch with the idea, and he sent us to area community associations, which we did, and they found no issue with them, and I'm aware of no issues that have arisen since the use was adopted at that time, which I think was in 2019. And similarly, in this time, I'm sorry, the second time was actually with Councilwoman Bevins for use that would have been in the Middle River, White Marsh area. And that user ended up moving on, so the legislation never made its way to the to vote. But it's another indicator that this use has seemed to try to find its way into these office parks and business park type settings where I think they are appropriate. And again, here we are in 2023, and I think we actually first met with Councilman Patoka in 2022, and then came back again in 2023. Again, with this need to amend the law to allow the use in this ML zone. And as Councilman Patoka indicated, we met with Ruxton Riderwood Group, and they gave it some serious thought, and they, I believe, have indicated to the councilman their support. I know that they sent a membership-wide email letting everybody know about the legislation, and I spoke last night with one of the leaders within the organization who indicated that they've not heard anything. And I think the fact that nobody is here further demonstrates that they're supportive of this request. So we would ask you to vote in favor of this legislation, and we hope that the Falls Road Animal Hospital can continue to service people for 7 more decades. Thank you very much. And more.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mudd. We appreciate your sharing your comments with us this afternoon or this evening. Any other questions or comments from the members? All right, thank you very much. Everybody have a wonderful evening.